Once again, for today's movie review, we get to cover a movie from 1995, which is today's movie review, is a Goofy movie. A Goofy movie, it was made in 1995, and this series, how it has brought to how it has seen Goof Troop, of how. So for the thing we're going to be discussing for about the movie, like a Goofy movie, this is your Disney movie from the 90s, as how probably of how it goes. Yeah, a Goofy movie is directed by Kevin Lima, and it was released on April 7th, 1995, as well. And yes, this was based on the Goof Troop series by Robert Taylor and Michael Peraza Jr. as well. Yeah, because that's how Disney wanted to make an idea to make a Goofy movie, which is what it was originally considered to be a TV special Goof Troop for the potential ideas, but things just go out. But we'll come into that in just a moment, as how it goes. So, this movie was released in April 17th, 1997, which grossed about $3.6 million at the box office. But Walt Disney Pictures had a lot to do, and yet this movie has received a cult following. With how this movie became a nostalgic classic from the '90s from Disney, and yeah, this basically it's a lot more different than Goof Troop as well, for some things as well. It goes. I mean, there are basically a lot of Disney shows from the late '80s and early '90s ever written, like DuckTales, Tailspin, Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers. That's how the satisfactory results of how Disney had done throughout the 80s and the 90s up until Goof Troop arrived. But that's how, in the case of how a Goofy movie starts. So let's discuss. So, anyways, let's discuss about the movie a Goofy movie. So the movie begins of how Max is a teenager who wants to move on with his life, making his own decisions, what he has, learning from his own mistakes that he had in the past. But his dad, Goofy, doesn't want to lose his son Max, so he has to be all overprotective at the same time, constantly with Max. When Max manages to get almost in a certain amount of trouble at school, when he was trying to impress a girl he met named Roxanne, and not long after this, the principal calls Goofy, and this causes him to how he wanted to start a camp with Goofy as well, especially when Goofy was planning to have Max go on a camping trip as well. But Max, how he wanted to realize that the problem is that he wanted to go out to a party with the girl Roxanne, which Max always likes. Obviously, the camping trip has made Max had to cancel the date with Roxanne, which results in him disappointing the girl, which caused Max to lie to tell the girl Roxanne by telling her that he is going to be on stage at the rock concert that's being streamed over live television at the party. Because the rest of the movie is always road trip, where Goofy wants to have Max on a camping trip, but Max is still mad that he had to cancel his date with Roxanne. I mean, throughout the movie, of how the musical number goes, of how they do this, but that is the question of how they use musical numbers, especially if you ever watch a Goofy movie, of how this goes. But that's just besides the point, though. But yeah, above of all this, on how where Max and Goofy attempt to bond at first, things never go too well. Yeah, because things slowly changes where Max and Goofy start to get along more due for the sharing together quality time during activities, of how Goofy sits through a vehicle stunt show, but Max visits a yard doesn't like, but how Goofy is organizing a camping trip, but he visits a yarn museum, which he finds boring when Goofy really enjoys, because Max was not interested in the yarn museum and the vehicle stunt show, because Max is not interested, because that's not his choice. And that's things go pretty well when Max and Goofy had a fight again, which take things times of how few days how it goes immediately when it starts always as a broken relationship. If there is near the end of the movie, Max is eating the map, and he decides if he wants to tell his dad to take a left or right at a junction of where the left goes to LA, where he goes to the campsite. This leaves Max in a difficult situation where he decides to have a decision. What's more important, his relationship with the girl Roxanne, which Max likes, or the relationship between him and his father Goofy? That's the different type of that. Just because is that Max is more concerned that he wanted to be on a date with Roxanne as well. I mean, That's just how the plot and the messages goes of how things just go pretty well for how this intended. That's how it goes by as well. Yeah, that's how surprisingly as well, and that's how you want it. No, and then they were in that on stage and they performed, and things just go pretty well for how this movie goes because Max is more concerned because that's how you expect seeing what's going on in a Goofy movie as how it attemptedly goes. That's how, and that's how it wasn't long until they made it when they passed to Idaho, then in California, and the Grand Canyon as well. But that's just how it's besides the point. And then that's how when Max and his dad Goofy made it to the concert, when they were backstage, they end up on stage and they dance with Powerline, watched by PJ, Pete, and Roxanne on these types of separate television. When they performed, I think the song what you expect hearing in a Goofy movie is that Stand Out. That's what they performed on stage, which is the song Stand Out, until Goofy and Max returned to Roxanne's house for some of the reasonable things. Yeah, when Max wanted to tell Roxanne the truth, but she accepted the truth that Max had to explain to Roxanne of how this things goes. She always had the feelings for Max ever since the first time when the relationship between in Max and Roxanne. And that's how you end this movie with Max introducing his dad Goofy to Max's girlfriend Roxanne near the end of the movie. So that's the plot on there. The animation, I mean, it's very well done, well traditionally than any other movies, because at least this movie was done traditionally animation for any Disney movie in the 90s, is because everything of how this is based on Goof Troop TV series that was part of the Disney Afternoon, yeah, which is centering around Goofy and his son Max. This was originally supposed to be a potential for a TV special, but Disney wanted to make it as a theatrical film based on the television series. And yeah, Max was a kid in the show Goof Troop, but in a Goofy movie, Max is basically a teenager because he's in high school as well as how you would know, or something like that as well. But that's just how it's becoming the essential that how it's than any other certain studio mainstream other Disney movies like Lion King, or that's how it's given these types of budget on the comparison on these types of films, especially for what Disney had a lot to do for a Goofy movie, for how, yeah, the cast on here from a Goof Troop, we had our Bill Farmer and Jim Cummings. Yeah, Jim Cummings does the voice for Pete, just like he did in the TV show Goof Troop, which ironically, that's how it's a lot more different than Goof Troop, even though Goof Troop ended on December 5th, 1992, which is only after 78 episodes. But anyways, so given to the think that is how Goof Troop had a lot wanted to be a potential TV special for when the idea for a Goofy movie, how it goes as well. But that's the thing, and yeah, but how apparently, though, there is also a sequel follow-up to a Goofy movie, which is a direct-to-video sequel titled An Extremely Goofy Movie, which came out on February 29th, 2000. But which is also a finale to which is basically how it's a lot more different than a Goofy movie as well, from what I understand. But I prefer as a Goofy movie, basically, in my opinion as well. So if you ever want to know about this, because a Goofy movie is particularly one of my favorite movies from Disney. I mean, if you want to talk about 90s nostalgic movies from Disney, I mean, it's been a while since I've watched this movie on YouTube last year, and yes, this was another Disney movie that I seen on YouTube as a full movie I went, which is a Goofy movie. And I think the animation is good. The music was great. I mean, the musical number parts were alright, though. But the sound was great. The acting was awesome and excellent. I mean, it just almost feels like if a Goof Troop had a TV movie, but apparently things don't go. But Disney decided to make this movie as a theatrical film rather than a TV special, especially for a movie like a Goofy movie, of how they wanted to do this potentially as well. Yeah, because what do I think of this movie? I loved it, because I figured this movie is an excellent film. Yeah, because there are some great in humor in this movie, but there are some moments on there, especially when Max is more concerned that he wants to date with Roxanne, which is part of these moments of how a Goofy movie goes as well. But overall, I like this movie because I decided to give this movie 10 out of 10 stars because I like this movie a lot. I mean, it's been a while since I've watched a Goofy movie on YouTube as well, from what I understand. Because a Goofy movie was originally intended to be a Goof Troop TV special, but instead they wanted to make it as a full-length theatrical movie, what Disney had a lot to do for this particular movie, like a Goofy movie. Yeah, but that's just how it is. So that's going to be it for my movie review on a Goofy movie for today, you guys. Thank you for watching, but before we go, here's what I'm going to say for this one. If you haven't seen a Goofy movie, you can watch it on Disney Plus, or you can get it on DVD as well. Your choice to pick. If you haven't seen a Goofy movie, give this movie a watch, because I recommend you this classic, nostalgic Disney movie from the 90s as well. Yeah, because I love this movie, because I know there's some moments on there as well. But there's some musical parts on there, in this, like the music numbers as well, especially. It's like Stand Out and On Open Road as well, on what you expect seeing in a Goofy movie as well.